NATO leaders are meeting in Ankara this week, and the mood is tense. The alliance has 32 members. All of them are under pressure from US President Donald Trump to spend more on defense. At last year's summit in The Hague, NATO countries agreed to raise their target to 5% of GDP by 2035. That includes 3.5% for military spending and another 1.5% for security-related needs. Now, Trump wants proof that allies are actually moving. European countries are expected to respond in Ankara with defense contracts worth tens of billions of dollars. NATO is also announcing new military capabilities. Secretary General Mark Rutte says the alliance will launch a strategic airlift fleet of A400M transport planes. It will also expand its A330 tanker and transport fleet, and allies plan to buy up to 10 Saab globalized surveillance aircraft to replace aging AWACS planes.
Today, several allies are officially announcing the forthcoming delivery of the 10th Airbus 330 MRTT aircraft to the multinational, multi-role tanker transport fleet. This is bringing us one step closer to the full MRTT fleet of 12 aircraft, such as the High North. So, allies are also launching a new multinational project focused on the Airbus A400M. This is world-class strategic airlift capability. The A330 MRTT and the A440-400 will provide the alliance with two highly capable multinational fleets.
These are not small purchases. They point to a bigger problem inside NATO. Europe has promised to spend more, but money has to become weapons, aircraft, ammunition, air defense, and logistics. That takes years. Analysts say the summit is less about announcing a new direction and more about showing that last year's promises are being turned into capability. Trump's pressure is driving much of the urgency. Since his first presidential campaign, he has argued that the US carries too much of NATO's burden. This year, his tone remains sharp. On the eve of the summit, he called Germany's defense spending ridiculous. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz defended his budget, calling it the country's biggest effort yet to strengthen defense.
Liebe Kollegen, wir Deutsche lernen auch von euch. Wir wollen das sehr deutlich auch sagen. Ihr habt erstens sehr viel früher verstanden als wir, dass wir für unsere Freiheit, unsere Sicherheit und unseren Wohlstand etwas tun müssen. Diese Bedrohung ist nicht abstrakt, sondern sie ist sehr konkret an der Ostflanke der NATO.
The US has also announced a phased withdrawal of some warplanes, destroyers, and submarines from NATO countries. That has made European capitals more nervous. Less US air power in Europe would have a real impact on the alliance's military posture. Ukraine is another central issue. President Vladimir Zelensky is in Ankara and is expected to meet Trump on Wednesday. Ukraine is not a NATO member, but it depends heavily on NATO states for weapons and air defense. Zelensky is expected to ask for more Patriot air defense systems as Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities intensify. A drone attack on Kiev killed at least 11 people on Monday. For Ukraine, the message it wants from Ankara is sustained support. The more interceptors Ukraine receives, the more Russian missiles it can stop. The fewer it receives, the more damage Russia can inflict. The summit also brings in partners beyond NATO. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is attending. Australia, Japan, and New Zealand are sending defense or foreign ministers. Gulf states including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE are also involved after being affected by the US-Israel war on Iran. Their presence shows how NATO's security agenda now stretches beyond Europe. For host country Turkey, this summit is also a chance to project influence. Turkey has been a NATO member since 1954, but has the alliance's second largest army after the United States. It also sits at a strategic crossroads between Europe, the Middle East, the Black Sea, and the Caucasus. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan wants Turkey to be seen as a reliable NATO power with a growing defense industry. Ankara is expected to push allies to remove restrictions on defense trade within NATO. It also wants progress with France and Italy on SAM-T missile defense systems and wider defense cooperation. Erdogan is also expected to raise defense issues directly with Trump in bilateral talks. There is another diplomatic track in Ankara. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara is not expected at the NATO summit, but he is holding a separate meeting with Trump. That adds another regional layer to a summit already shaped by Ukraine, Iran, Gulf security, and European defense spending. So what should we watch? First, whether Europe's new contracts are large enough to satisfy Trump. Second, whether Ukraine gets stronger air defense commitments. Third, whether Turkey uses the summit to advance its defense industry and regional role. And fourth, whether NATO can project unity while the US is demanding more from Europe and reducing parts of its own military footprint. The Ankara summit will be judged by a practical question. Can NATO turn spending promises into real capability before the next crisis tests the alliance?